Good evening. And I don't know if I'm live yet, but we'll see. It's I think it's taking some time. Okay. I'm live. Good evening, everybody. It is 5:29 actually, a little early. 5:30 here on the West Coast. I am in beautiful Las Vegas, which is showing signs of life. I flew in here today, and each week I fly somewhere, and each week there shows more signs of activity. So that's kind of exciting. It's cooling off here. This was only 102 today, the high, which is better than 119 as it was a couple weeks ago. But we're enjoying a beautiful switch and transition into fall. It's a full moon, as you know, and I'm wishing you the well for that. So today we're talking about Huna. Again, we're doing a series of these webinars for the coming weeks or so, and we're going to be focusing on Huna. And today we're talking specifically about wealth and mastery of your life. There's a myth out there, I know I had it, that wealth is non-spiritual. I worked with somebody today that had a limiting belief, a core wound around money is the root of all evil. Money is filthy lucre. And that, of course, could not be farther from the truth. Money is what drives us. And, you know, the ancient Hawaiians had no belief that there was anything evil, dirty, or nasty. And money was one of them. And Uncle George, who I'll talk about in a minute, said that in order to manifest your path, in order to really actualize your dreams, having wealth, abundance in whatever form. You know, we say money, but it can be abundance in relationships, abundance in material things, abundance in connection with source. And so this particular webinar is, you know, how do you attract wealth as part of your spirituality and see the interconnectedness of your spirituality and wealth, and that they're not mutually exclusive. That somehow, if I'm spiritual, I can't have money, or if I have a lot of money, I can't be spiritual, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. And so we're going to talk about connecting to source, how to do that. We're going to be talking about the myth that money is evil and that being spiritual means you have to have a vow of poverty. There's certainly a lot of stuff in the literature and in many cultures around a vow of poverty. We're going to talk about that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how we go into these topics at our upcoming retreat at Mount Charleston in Las Vegas, October 21st to the 25th. It's a 5-day level 1 Huna. So why should you care? If you're here, you are probably a Huna Tech. In fact, I am going to look, see who's here. And I don't see where that is. I don't know. I don't see. You know, if you are here, just say hello. I see Donna Baker. Okay, that will help me know, because I think unless you comment, I don't see who's here. So just give me a little a shout out and I'll say hello. And so Argel's here, which is awesome. Daryl is here, which is awesome. We're going to talk about using your connection to source to manifest, not instead of, or some separate process. We're going to talk about right livelihood. How do you gain work that is fulfilling? Right livelihood, right work, right path is a very Buddhist concept, and that, you know, what I love to say these days is that I don't feel like I work. The joke, I was in San Diego over the weekend and I did a breakthrough session with a client, and the joke amongst the team is I move from one couch to the next. I'm, you know, at a recreational couch, perhaps sipping, you know, coffee and looking at TV, and then I just move to somebody's house and sit on their couch and we do a breakthrough session. But for me, it's not like work at all. It's really, really fulfilling. I really enjoy it, really love it. And so how do you create a path that is fulfilling, meaningful, and supports the life you want to live? And then how do you manifest the energetic resources of the universe so that you aren't doing all the work alone? Because the reality is that we are all supported by this universal consciousness. Never mind, we have Halal and we have Kumumat and we have all the other teachers and we have ourselves and each other, so that It's not about I've got to do it all on my own, but where can I seek literal fellowship in terms of people, but then also how do you activate your own spiritual awareness and connections through pule or prayer, goal setting, and things like that. I want to talk today, and I'm going to go through a concept that we go through in Huna specifically, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail and maybe explain it from a different point of view. Rochelle McCall's here. Hello, nice to see you. Um, There are two fundamental lessons that we talk about in Huna. One is the lesson of mastery, and the other is lesson of life. And these correspond, if you're into psychology, to developmental stages. If you think about it, when we incarnate in a body, we have a lot of tasks to do. Incarnating in a physical body involves, a declaration on the other side and meeting with a higher council and choosing your parents and choosing the path. And I don't exactly know how it works, but these are some of the theories that were taught anyway. And then you have, I'll just talk briefly about psychological theory that we have, birth to seven, which we call the imprinting phase, which is when the unconscious mind is just wide open. It's like a sponge. So your children, grandchildren, 0 to 7 are just walking around unconscious minds. They just take in everything indiscriminately, really. From 8 to about 12 or 13, we call it the modeling phase. It's where they look at others and they copy others. From 13 to 17 or 18, we call it the latency stage. It's where they start to form relationships and they start to have a little bit of drama, middle school tween drama, and then later teen years into young adulthood, we start developing more adult-like kinds of things where we individuate, we go to college, we separate. Lisa Adams says hello. Hello, nice to see you, Lisa Adams. And so in Huna and NLP, we talk about, the four bodies, if you will. We talk about, and I don't have a slide, you all know it, you've heard it a million times. We have the physical body. And the tasks of growing a physical body at either end of the lifespan, as I'm discovering, is a challenge. Young bodies and learning how to walk and all those kinds of things. And the physical body is very important. The emotional body is also very important. The mental body, and then finally the spiritual body. The lesson of mastery is done typically in the first few decades of the lifespan. It's where we learn how to hopefully bring down energy and manifest it for practical purposes. We learn how to live in a body. We learn how to speak. We learn how to learn. We go to school. And that we go through the paces of mastering a career, something to do, mastering being a good partner. And these are developmental milestones that you can look at in terms of whatever developmental stage it is, whether it's walking or going to school or changing schools or and so on. Marriage, divorce, having children, raising children, rearing children. And throughout the lifespan, we are called upon to actualize our activities on the earth. And that involves constant learning and constant change. And it's not without this constant change that propels us into the ability to access the spiritual realms. Um, I think babies are very spiritual. If you've ever held a baby and looked into his or her eyes, it's a very spiritual experience. If you've ever held or seen a disabled child, a Down syndrome child, or a profoundly developmentally delayed child, it's like looking into the eyes of God. And so somehow along the way, you pick your developmental milestone, we forget. I work with very young children. I'm often brought very young children who are labeled autistic, crystalline, indigo, star children. They're nonverbal. And we at Heads Up in Las Vegas work with them using all sorts of modalities, including Huna, hypnosis, NLP, psychotherapy, biofeedback, things like that, applied behavioral analysis, and so on, to really talk to these kids, and that there needs to be an awareness, particularly now, and I'm going to forget the statistic, but I'm going to throw it out there, and you can check it. I wanted to know in my generation how many autistic kids were being born like in the 60s, and how many autistic kids comparatively were being born now. And it's, I want to say 14,000 times, like exponentially. And I'm probably wrong. And I should have had that. I didn't know I was going to talk about it. Now, there are theories as to why more developmentally delayed children are being born. Some say it's vaccines and that kind of thing. I don't agree with that. I don't want to get into a political discussion. Spiritually and metaphysically, what we know is that, and I see some of you have children that I know on this call, on this Facebook Live, who are tremendously gifted and who have psychic and alternative or intuitive abilities that you don't have. And I'm seeing that the planet is calling for us to raise our vibration into a higher level of consciousness, and that we as a species are raising our consciousness so that we're not so much only about this lesson of mastery, which is how do I learn to drive? How do I learn to do the tasks of daily living, a career? How do I learn to raise children? But that there is if you look at the four bodies, remember physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, there's a need to access energy. Now, we don't necessarily call it spiritual energy, but it is. If you actualize energy and bring it down for your purposes of work here on the earth, ultimately we all come from a source. We all come from a place that is pure energy, raw energy. Our souls are pure and raw energy. And so, regardless of your spiritual belief or your philosophical belief, quantum physics, in chaos theory, string theory, quantum mechanics has proven that we come from energy. Bruce Lipton has written about it in The Biology of Belief, Deepak Chopra and quantum healing. There are many, many authors now that are talking about we come from light. We are literally beings of light. We've talked about historically that we're carbon life forms, and recent research has revealed in the field of quantum physics that underneath the nothingness, if you will, at the base of it, is a thin layer of condensed light. And below that has been called the resting place of God. And so when the ancients called us beings of light or light workers or light beings, I don't think they were being metaphorical. We are actually literally beings of light. So whether you buy into or have a spiritual tradition that you follow, by design, humans begin the lesson of mastery, which is about bringing down the energy from spirit to actualize. Now, in terms of manifestation, in terms of Huna, there are techniques that abound as to how to bring that down. We've done some of them if you followed me for any length of time, in terms of the Healani meditation, which I think we may do next week, in terms of Ho'oku'u, the release of negative emotions, MER, a more NLP-based pseudo-hypnotic technique, Ho'oponopono, the forgiveness technique. All of this, when you're accessing realms in your unconscious mind or your higher self, help you access that higher realm vibration and bring it down. And so the lesson of mastery, it's almost like a cycle. I'm going to talk briefly now about the lesson of life, which is the same and different. The lesson of life is about connecting up to. So if the lesson of mastery is about bringing down the manna, calling the manna for your use on the planet and your activities, the lesson of life is about connecting up to source to literally raise your vibration, to literally enhance your consciousness, to it literally tap into the higher realms so that you may become more spiritual and manifest even more. So if you see the three selves, four bodies I've talked about already. On the other side is the three selves, the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the higher self. And we've talked at great length about that the unconscious mind is the repository of everything that's ever happened to us. It's like a big data recorder. The higher self is that portion of your consciousness, your soul, that remains on the other side, and for all we know, incarnates in other places at the same time, little mind-boggling, but it is our soul, if you will. And some of you have done higher self connection with me and higher self therapy with me. Ho'oku'u in English is actually higher self therapy. We actually have the higher self come in to remove the black bags, right? And then, of course, the conscious mind. In Western culture, the conscious mind is thought or was thought to be the be all end all. If I could only read a book about it, or if I could only study it enough, or get a pamphlet or a brochure, or if I could get enough information, then I would have a sense of mastery. And I always laugh because I have a lot of information. I joke with people that if you ever want to max out your brain, just get a PhD because pretty much you have 6, 7 years of reading and trying to cram more information into your brain. And my favorite thing to talk about in my irreverent way around information is if life was only about information, we'd all be thin. No one would smoke. We would all only choose those behaviors that are healthful because we have enough information. How many times have you worked with a client or tried to influence someone and they say to you, well, let me read, do you have a resource, that I can read more about it? Or maybe some of you are in sales. Have you ever tried to close someone and they say, well, let me read more about it? And the reality is we have enough information. We have plenty of information. In fact, I don't know what the current statistic is, but Moore's law years ago said that the rate of available information, well, this was processor speed. There was another law that said the rate of available information was doubling every 18 months on the planet. They gave up, if you think about just in the 2 million bits per second that are bombarding any human in a second, every second, 2 million, that we can only understand or relate with 126 bits. This is from neuroscience. And that I don't know how they counted 2 million bits, frankly, but it's at least that. Think about how quickly you can, like you listen to a song and it takes you back. You smell something like chocolate chip cookies and it brings up a whole flood of emotion. You, you see something, you have some sort of sensory experience and it opens up, could be thousands of words or concepts or sensations of a memory. And all that is stored in your unconscious mind. And in a moment, in a flash, you can call forth, and I could do it here. I'm looking at a variety of ages here. I could call forth a song or some sort of, you would have, you would remind, or I could say, where were you on September 11th? I think everybody was born here. Where were you on September 11th? And that would call forth a host of memories. That's a lot of information. It's a lot of bits of information. The reality is, and this is my theory, and you're not talking, so I'm going to say it. I believe that we as a species are elevating. And I believe that the reason for the incarnation of many of these children who are able to help. And Rhonda Farage from Perth, Australia just joined us. Hello. I'm looking at the emojis. Those are cool emojis. There's a couple hearts, some other things. So, welcome. The human voice can only speak at about 125 words a minute. This is important. Listen carefully. For those of you that have kids, want to have kids, have heard of kids, or are children yourselves, the upward limit of I used to work in a hospital and I would dictate my chart notes. And I would speak at about the rate of an auctioneer. Patient is a 36-year-old Caucasian male that self-presents with a chief complaint of chest pain. Patient is conscious, alert, and oriented, no acute distress. And my lips would be flapping. I can't even do it anymore. I don't do that anymore. But it's a whole thing. Doctors dictating, right? And that's about 125 words a minute. An auctioneer, if you've ever been to an auction, that's more than that, but it's not really intelligible. So I'm talking about the upward limit of the human voice to share information is about 125 words. I'm not speaking that quickly now. I'm speaking at 80 to 100 maybe. The human mind, on the other hand, has a great capacity for the synthesis of information. You are probably, all of you, thinking about, oh, Donna Baker's a court reporter. Okay, so she's doing that court reporter thing that I don't understand, that she's probably able to type hundreds and hundreds of words per minute. But it's easy for her because she's using some code and I don't know how it works. She can tell us. But the human voice has an upward limit. The human mind does not. So we have a variety of ages here. We have millennials, we have baby boomers, we have other people in between. I'm going to say, for the purposes of argument, that I have the slowest mind on this call, that my mind can probably process between 2 and 5,000 words a minute. I'm quantifying that when I include songs and memories and smells and tastes and a host of things, right? And that means how much can I process in a minute? Short-term memory, long-term memory, immediate recall, all of it. I bet Argel's on here. He's 25 years old. I'm going to go out on a limb that he can probably process between 30 and 40,000 words a minute. He was raised with the controller in his hand. He was raised with the internet. He was raised with more information that was, let me put it to you this way. Was more information in a daily newspaper when we used to have daily newspapers. Paper, remember paper? That was available in all the world before 1750. If you think about your parents and grandparents of whatever age you are, how much information they can process and receive, it's more than that. If I look at Argel, probably 30 to 40,000 words a minute. The boy can multitask like nobody's business. I can't. You'll watch me on this call. I will look over to the people and I'll get distracted. I'll look over here to other things and get distracted and I will lose my flow. I don't do it well. I don't juggle. I can't juggle. I can do one thing at a time. People think I'm a really good listener. I think I am. I get paid to listen. I just can't do anything else, which is a blessing. I can't. I I used to get busted by my sister. Do you ever have a family member who talks and they just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and you can't get a word in edgewise? And I would, when the internet happened and I would be on my computer, she'd say, Pat Scott, you're on your computer again. You're not listening. And I wasn't. I was zoned out because she talks like crazy. So anyway, and she could talk probably 125 words a minute easy. My point is that children coming up now, I have a 17-year-old in my practice who's probably got an IQ starting with 2, excruciatingly bright, not very socially inept, which is what I do. I help these teenagers cope with being in a body, right? And I bet he processes at over 50,000 words a minute. So if you're confused why your teenager or your young adult maybe appears distracted or we can't talk enough that's interesting to capture the attention of 50,000 words a minute. So when you say to anyone, I want your full attention, no, you don't. You don't want their full attention because you can't possibly fill it up. So this is why one of my specialties as teenage boy whisperers is help these teenage boys who are captivated with the virtual world. And I'm getting to the lesson of life in a moment. This is important stuff, though. You cannot speak interestingly enough, loud enough, or fast enough to captivate someone who's processing at 50,000 words a minute. And these are rough numbers. Please don't, I can give you some neuroscience research that you can look at, but just take my word for it. Your young kids can process more information than I can. Let's just suffice it to say. And unless I am particularly captivating, I am unable to reach them. Now, I happen to be particularly captivating through lots of training and lots of school. Now, the lesson of life is your life is not your conscious mind. There are other things going on in relationships that are way more important than the content. You know that 93% of the meaning people derive from communication is nonverbal. I have, I want to be careful, always really careful about confidentiality, but I have a client who's, a loved one just died, and in hospice. And the question prior to the death was, well, what do I do? What do I do? Nothing. You sit with them. What do I say? Nothing. You sit with them. You hold their hand. You don't need to say anything. Information is not the be all end all. Trust me, I've tried. I've tried to glean lots and lots of information. What is the be all end all from a Huna perspective is the connection to spirit, the connection to source. So this lesson of life is about us from our vantage point in a body connecting upwards to what's really important. Now you'll notice there are two sides: lesson of mastery, bringing it down; lesson of life, sending it up. It's actually a cycle, and it's a cycle we go through a lot because we learn different things. We learn different lessons. We have different karmic patterns that go up and around and down and up and around and down all the whole life. People do ask me, when am I going to be done? When you're done. I'm not done. I'm not even close to being done. What I mean by done is stuff comes up. I have baggage. I release it every day. We've talked in other webinars about the release process and that it's a daily activity. Forgiveness is a daily activity. I'm not saying that to guilt you into it. I just understand that I think when we have learned what this life has to offer us, it's time to go somewhere else, and that we can use the opportunity. So this lesson of life is about taking an understanding that our whole life is not our conscious mind. Statistic that Kumu Matt talks about is, I don't know where he got this, I could probably find out, neuroscience again, that the average synaptic fires of the conscious mind is about 40 nerve impulses per second, and the average synaptic firing of the unconscious mind is about 40 million nerve impulses per second. And so do the math. There's just more available information from your unconscious mind, and your unconscious mind tapping into your higher self. Hello, Jimmy Rogers. Good evening from East Tennessee. Welcome. Nice to see you. Welcome aboard. We're talking about the lesson of life as opposed to the lesson of mastery, and this will be on the recording as well. And so if you are, as I was, somebody who was really enamored with information and learning and jargon and learning stuff, there's a limit. And so the lesson of life is really, how much do you need to know? When is it more of a metaphysical process than a physical process? Lesson of life, lesson of mastery, physical processes, learning to do stuff. I mean, that, if I had to sum it up, learning to do stuff, learning to be competent, masterful in your chosen field, as whatever you choose to do. Lesson of life, the mastery and competency there is learning to connect and when to shut up, and when to receive the information that your guides, the angels, your higher counsel, for some of you, you're a Vaiku, whoever, whatever, and whoever you believe is over there on the other side, to actually receive information that is not contained in a book. This is intuition. This is spiritual connection. This is your gut feelings. And so that lesson, now I see it at both ends of the lifespan, by the way. I see children up to about age 5 or 6, super psychic, super intuitive, super connected. They're closer to the other side than we are, right? And then I see elders who have maybe lost some of their faculties. Interesting story. So I was in graduate school. Some of you may know I'm a musician. I play clarinet and I played all the woodwinds as a young adult and played in bands and things. And I was doing my second year graduate internship at a locked geropsychiatric hospital in Los Angeles. And it was for the, it's the older people, so 55 and over. I don't want to say super crazy, but I mean, not functional. It wasn't a nursing home. It was a rehabilitation hospital run by the state, but it was the crazy of the craziest. It was locked. And I learned so much about just myself and about working with this population. And my supervisor asked me to come up with a group that could reach the non-reachable, the people who were vegetative. And knowing that they had a music therapist that came in, and I'd sat in on some of her sessions, and she would play the auto harp or the guitar, and she would sing. And I noticed that for some of the most vegetative residents, they actually had more activity in just movement and just engagement than they did in the other groups that were they would just sit there and not make any. So I created a group called Musical Nostalgia. My mother was a band singer in the 1930s and 40s, and she sang with names like Ted Lewis and Jack Teagarden and Glenn Miller and Harry James, and she knew Benny Goodman and all these big band greats. And that's a whole other story for another time. But what she left me with was a great appreciation of big band music. And so I had a book. It was a fake book. Some of you that are musicians know what a fake book is. And I brought it, and I brought my clarinet, and I just played standards, meaning songs, music from that era. And the most demented and uh, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, people who were would clap and they'd start tapping their feet. And then we evolved into I don't play piano well enough to do that, but I had the music therapist who did play piano, and we would start having a sing along. And these people who had been nonverbal for decades started singing these old standards, Fly Me to the Moon and Begin the Beguine and, whatever, 1 o'clock jump. And they would tap their feet and they would clap and they were engaged and they were smiling. They had no conscious awareness of what was going on in terms of they didn't talk to me about it, but they left in a higher life condition that they came in. And we did it every week for about a year. And it was a great success. And it drew everybody from the whole hospital. And it became this great sing along. And so the lesson of life is about what are those non tangible aspects to your life and your consciousness that you forget? Music, nature, a child, just a breath of fresh air, getting out, and especially now. I mean, I haven't talked about COVID. We've got this pressure cooker of a globe going on. But the lesson of life is so you've mastered your craft. You've read a bunch of books, stuff. You got a high IQ. You're raising excellent kids. I can see who's on this call, raising excellent kids. What now? And what the lesson of life teaches you is how to draw on those non-physical, non-linear, non-sequential aspects of life to round out your experience so that when you do cross over, you've had a well-rounded experience. And from a Huna perspective, this is an ongoing cycle that we do. And I'm now going to look at my notes because I've been blabbing for a minute. And I think I said it. Note that it starts with your connection to the source, your spirit, higher self, and that it's cyclical. When you're on your path, the universe supports you and helps you manifest bigger and better things that you can have imagined by yourself. This is important. Okay, I'm glad I read. I'm glad I'm reminded. Have you ever set a goal and gotten something that was better than the goal? You couldn't have imagined the partner you got or the job you got. You wanted a job. Maybe you weren't so great at SMART goals. I mean, we joke about, is it specific and measurable and is it all lined out according to your values? And we can, trust me, I've done all that. I've geeked out on SMART goals and, I kind of the poster child for it. And lately, I'm going to say last 20 years, I have gotten some of the most amazing results that I couldn't have planned for. I couldn't. If I sat down with my journal and my well-intentioned, and some of you are SGI Buddhists on here, and I chanted and I did my practices and I did my vowels and I was Johnny on the spot I flossed, I could not have orchestrated some of these results in my conscious mind. They were way better than I ever could have imagined because I just shut up and let the universe. So this relationship, and I call it the universe, call it your higher self, call it God, call it spirit, call it source, energy, whatever it is. When you are entrained in the rhythm of the universe through whatever means, Huna says, think not that all wisdom is in your school. There are Huna techniques that we're going to teach at level 1 in the fall in Mount Charleston. And some of you know these and have been to. I mean, Rochelle has been to level 1. I'm looking. Rhonda is a very, very experienced Huna practitioner, as is Arjula level 4. Donna Baker is up there in so many ways. Love you. And so, and I'm not sure, Jimmy, if you've studied Huna or not. I don't know you by name, but welcome. Anwar has studied with me and is doing well. So nice to see you on here. Um, Whatever your mechanism is, get your stuff out of the way. Because if you are wallowing in self-pity every day, that amount of negativity is going to push anything you want away. And I don't mean to be overly pungent about this, but the reality is the universe responds in a very in-like way. If you say, you can study affirmations, let's say, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want, I want. I want this kind of a person. I want this kind of a car. I want, I want, I want. Now, your unconscious mind, which is a holographic plate of the universe, sorry, here's I want. And what you're left with is wanting. That's why when we craft affirmations, say it as if now. It is December 31st, 2020. I weigh 190 pounds. It is January 15th, 2021. I am in the relationship of my dreams with the partner that best suits me for the good of all. The good of all considered, whatever. Because if you're putting out there needy, whiny, complaining, wallowing, wanting, desperate, you're going to get that back. And the lesson of life is attuning yourself to that realization that you have to fake it until you make it. You don't have to. We learn. We'll learn. Oh, by the way, we will all learn. We will all get there. There is no wasted effort, and every single one of us will eventually break through and get to wherever we need to go. I'm absolutely confident of that. I've seen it time and time again. Some of us, myself included, slow learners take a little longer. And you know my story. 2015, I was burning the candle at both ends and had a near-death ski accident that I'm still suffering from, and didn't quite put it together. And a year later, 2 years later, diagnosed with terminal cancer. Oh, geez, wow. So here I am waking up, and I have all the book learning and the book knowledge in the world. Truly, I have more education than just about anybody I know, and that did not help me learn the lesson of life. Got a lot of mastery, but all of my studies and all of my certificates and all of my learning in terms of the getting good at something did not help me. I had to learn a lesson of life, which was, do you want to live in a body? If you'd like to live in a body, you're probably going to have to take better care of it. It doesn't sound like rocket science, but it eluded me. And I had those. So the cool thing is that the universe has a sense of humor, and it will continue to show you the lessons. Now, sometimes they show up as karmic patterns. You attract the same partner in different bodies. It's miraculous. I I watched I watched a young lady. Her name is Taylor Tomlinson. She's a female. She's a comedian, obviously, and she is really funny. She's just really. I highly recommend her. She's on Netflix, and she encapsulates it in like a couple sentences. She says, "Yeah, how did I not learn the lesson about relationships? I'm dating a DJ again." And it was just perfect. That you're dating the same dysfunctional scenario. You have the same dysfunctional scenario of a boss. You have the same dysfunctional financial scenario. And whatever, pick your poison. It doesn't matter. The bottom line, as far as we're concerned today, is if you'd like to manifest more wealth, more abundance in anything, not just money, not just a car. Do you ever notice that when you get the thing you said you wanted, all of a sudden it's like a new toy, like a child? A Christmas morning, the new truck is great, and then the next day it's can't be found. Adults are like that. I know I've had several cars, like, ooh, this is great, and then 2 days later, or the bill comes, the car payment bill comes, and think, ooh, crap, this is a lot of money for a fancy car I didn't need, kind of thing. So the lesson of life is about attuning your daily practice for health and wellness and aligning yourself so that you are punno, you are aligned. You're living your best version of yourself. And when you do this, it doesn't, and this is that I can hear my nerdy self and some of my nerdy people out there go, well, but which is it? Do I do the life or do I do the mastery? You do them both. You do the mastery and then you do the life and then you do the mastery again, and then you do the life and then you do the mastery again. And it's a continuous cycle of learning and connecting to source. Now I'm here to tell you, I'm a work in progress, just like all of us are. I don't make any apologies for that. And if you know me, you know I'm very transparent. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I did the best. I did a lot of cool things, and then I almost died and decided I didn't want to die. And then I got cancer and almost died again. Decided I didn't want to die. I don't know how many lives I actually have, so I'm trying to pay attention this time and stay around because people who love me say that they want me to stay around. So I'm working on that, and I'm no different than anyone, with this in this regard. And so, what Huna teaches you. And it is a collection of tools. It's not a religion um, per se, but it's a collection of tools. And when you can make that connection to your higher self, when you can be initiated into some of the symbology of Huna, when you can learn to chant, when you can learn to pule, which is prayer, goal setting, when you can learn to release negative emotions at the end of your day, like that, when you can learn to forgive relationships that have animosity that is decades and decades old in a blink of an eye, you can clear out some of that intrinsic negativity. I think that helps polish us to be better. But it starts with your connection to source, your spirit, your higher self, and your commitment to daily practice, to really looking at yourself plainly, not with anybody. I mean, you can talk to other people. I mean, I'm a therapist. People talk to me, and I guide them into. And if nothing else, I'm the mirror to hold it up to them to say, okay, how are you doing? This is what I think. How do you think you're doing? And the tools are cool. There are 18 aspects to Huna. One of them is a meditation tradition. There's a movement tradition, Hula. There are multiple hypnotic, trance-like release techniques. Joanne is here. Welcome, Joanne. Nice to see you. Funny that I just say release techniques and Joanne pops up. That's mystical. Um, it's a joke. I'm giving her a hard time. And if you can get yourself out of your way, frankly, and stop thinking and connect with energy, and we teach you how to do that, you can manifest things that you didn't think were possible in terms of financial well-being, safety and security in your own skin. What would it be like to not have to worry about money? What would it be like not to have to have the solid relationship of your dreams, to have solid relationships of your dreams, meaning friends, family, romance, children, pets, right? What would it be like to not live paycheck to paycheck? Uh, and if you look at, some of you are from Halal, if you look at some of the people that come to Halal, extraordinarily successful financially, they're working on other things. They're working on, connection to source. And so I know that it's like this. When you're broke, money seems like the most important thing. When you have money, then other things seem important. Whenever you're at a basic level of survival and you're not meeting those basic needs, those are absolutely no doubt the most important things. And a lot of people right now are struggling. And part of the reason why we're doing these Facebook Lives and putting it on Facebook so people can at least start to be thinking about ways to manifest and attract abundance and wealth like that. And it's an intention. I think the other thing that happens, and it's happening with a member of my team right now, is, but what if I set a goal? Two things. What if I set a goal and I don't make it? Like it's not even in the ballpark. Great, set another goal. What if I set a goal and I make it? Great, set another goal. But aren't I telling my unconscious mind something? No. What if I set a goal and I get something and I don't really want it? Okay, well then set another goal. There's no wasted effort. There's no scorecard. Now, I will tell you, and Dr. Matt talks about this everywhere, if you persistently request something and and persistently say no to it, you can, your unconscious mind can say, well, I'm not going to keep offering this to you because you keep saying no to it. But in general, as long as the direction is moving towards, and you're setting goals and retuning them and retooling the course direction along the way, you're fine. There's no harm and no foul. What I'll say to you is you can't know, and you don't need to know. Right now, the world is full of so much ambiguity and uncertainty, and I think that to say, what's your 10-year goal, what's your 5-year goal, is noble. I'm 61 years old on Monday, and I would like to live a little while longer, like 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be depend on how the body holds up. The famous saying is, do you want to be 25 again? And what I say is, I'd love the wisdom I have at now in a body that was 25, because the body is a finite resource, and so you better take care of it. And I'm learning that one the hard way. And so manifesting is about changing your karma. I had a guy today who had I think I alluded to him earlier, he had a limiting belief about money, and that money was evil, money was filthy lucre, and money was the root of all evil. And we did what we did. He released it and felt a lot more expansive about money. And I look forward to seeing his progress. And so if you'd like to manifest, talk to us, about it's not a, it's not a kitschy sales pitch, but it's, if you want to learn how to use some of these techniques, our level 1 training is available at lasvegasHuna.com. And in our upcoming workshop is Huna Level 1. It's a 5-day training, and it involves not all 18 aspects of Huna. There are people on this call who have been studying it for years. I've been studying it for years. I don't know that I know all 18 aspects of Huna, but it's a great start, and it's a great direction for your life. And so I'm wondering, we're at 46, 47 minutes. Are there any questions or comments or anything? I think I hit the bases, but I will check, and somebody will correct me. Learning is one thing, but experiencing the energy is what it's really about. We at this workshop connect you to your higher self. We initiate you into some of the symbols of our lineage. We give you techniques to clear out a ton of baggage and more. At LasVegasHuna.com, I think. Oh, and it's about amplifying your energy. I didn't talk about that. The whole manifestation thing is about amplifying the intention and your energy so that you can attract what you want and stay nice and clean about it. I think I hit the bases. I think I did a great job of hitting all these bases. I had notes, but I get so distracted that if I look at the notes, then I forget my place in line. So I'm curious if there are any questions, any ideas, any requests, anything at all. I'll give you a minute to think about it. We'd love to see you. It's a beautiful place. Mount Charleston, it's actually held on sacred Native American land, the Paiute tribe, which is called the Nuwuvi tribe. And cool correspondence. There's a law of Huna called the law of correspondence. And Huna really kind of means sacred, secret, concealed wisdom, if you will. The Hawaiians call the Big Island, specifically Kilauea, the volcano that is active that you hear about in the news, is the resting place of Pele, who is the goddess of fire, goddess of the volcano, if you will. And it is said that it is the pico, or the umbilical cord of the earth, and the sacred resting place of the goddess of fire. This is in their texts. So a few years ago, this is about 5, 6 years ago, when I first did my very first level 1 up at Mount Charleston, I asked permission and I went up there and I studied and I met with the tribal chief, and they have a saying in their language that says, this is the Mount Charleston, it's not the Mount Charleston Mountains, but it's the Sheep Mountain Range, Spring Mountains in Las Vegas area, that this is the resting place and the, essentially the umbilical cord to the same, like word for word. And it was just, I got a shiver, a full body shiver, and I realized that was where we needed to do our workshop. And it is very sacred land. It is wonderfully sacred land, and it's beautiful. In late October, it's starting to get a little chilly up there, but it's a nice respite from the desert floor, and it's truly a magical experience. So we welcome you. And if not you, if you've been, tell somebody else. We're looking forward to seeing you. Okay, I am not seeing any questions, which I guess we don't. I'm learning. This is only like my third Facebook Live, so forgive me. And we're going to end class as we always do by saying Malamapono. We all stand in righteousness. Aloha keakua, which is lead with aloha, lead with love. Love is our shield. Aloha ke kahi I ke kahi, which means love one another, cherish one another, take care of one another. And finally, we on some level will see each other again. And so we don't say goodbye, we say ahui ho, which means we or ahui will connect on some level in the greater expanse of things at another time. So thanks so much for tuning in. And to those of you that are watching the recording, stay in touch. All the best to you.